the first piece we're going to look at is, in order to learn, in order to have any like new conversation about how to approach menopause, we first need to unlearn what we thought menopause to be. I'm going to repeat that. In order for us to have any new conversation about approaching menopause, we first need to unlearn what we thought menopause to be. Because as clinicians, as practitioners, as healers, we can come up with solutions only when we understand the underlying pathologies. So why is this important? If I believe, let's say as the health practitioner, that menopause is hormonal problem, that I am gonna treat it as a hormonal issue. If I have a client coming to me and she has gained weight, and she has hot flashes, and she can't sleep well at night, and she has like a heart palpitation, she has a lot of anxiety coming up, and I believe this to be an estrogen decline problem, a progesterone decline problem, then what am I gonna do? I'm gonna treat it as, okay, let's make sure that we can supplement this woman with estrogen and progesterone, period. I'm not going to be looking at other things that are essential to address, but because I see it as a hormonal problem, I'm going to see it and treat it as hormonal issue. And we need to start looking deeper. We need to start looking deeper. What do I mean by that? So traditional approach to menopause is, hey, you are gaining weight. Hey, you have dry vagina. Hey, you're losing your mojo. Hey, you have no vision in life. You know what? Your symptoms are normal. You are hormonal. Your estrogen is declining. Your progesterone is like non-existent. Your eggs are not viable enough to produce hormones anymore. So all of this, all of the symptoms are seen as estrogen problem, which is why everyone is getting HRT, which is why everyone is getting bioidentical hormones. And yet, with HRT and yet with bioidentical hormones, how many women are suffering? Isn't it time for us to sit down really peacefully and say, hey, if this would be really hormonal problems, then why women on bioidentical hormones will be still having big issues? Yes, there can be something that can be addressed with bioidentical hormones, but if we are not looking at the underlying cause for that hormonal decline, or we are not supporting the transition, and we're gonna look at that in a moment in a really potent way of how woman is producing hormones during menopause, then we are doing this service. We're doing this service to ourselves, we're doing this service to our community, we are perpetuating the outdated idea. This is an outdated, archaic idea that menopause is a hormonal problem, that menopause is an estrogen decline problem. So what are we missing here? Firstly, and if you can take one thing out of today, it will be this: menopause is not a hormonal issue. It will have hormonal symptoms, yes, of course. Low estrogen means all of this: hot flashes, dry vagina, no sex drive, 100%. But there are other things that are driving these symptoms. It's not the decline in estrogen. There's other pathway that is driving these hormonal symptoms. I want to identify that and really help you understand what this is. So the traditional solution, of course, is let's get you on HRT. And HRT, I don't know if you ever heard me speaking about birth control pill and how dangerous long 10, 15, 20 years of being on birth control can be for your body, can be for your client's body. If you have not heard me speaking about it, well, then you want to hang around in this group because I've got a lot to say on that. But birth control is one level. HRT is like taking the birth control on steroids. On steroids. HRT is basically a very dangerous cocktail of synthetic hormones and progesterone. We know the research is substantial. The research is very, very clear that HRT increases women's risk for cardiovascular diseases, certain type of strokes, and heart attacks. Cardiovascular disease, certain type of strokes, and heart attacks. Yet how many women every single day go to their health practitioners and many times are being prescribed HRT without like a full mindful sit down of the potential risk that might be involved in women taking HRT in the first place. No one is having a sit down with menopausal woman that's really struggling, just wants to feel normal, just wants to feel like herself, just wants to get all these difficult symptoms to go away. And of course, suddenly she's being given HRT. And in that, she is putting her hope for just getting back to normal, getting to some sense of okayness in her life. But very seldom, all these very dangerous side effects are being discussed with her. This is a dangerous game we are playing. This is a very dangerous game we are playing. And of course, every woman can make her choice. This is not about like, hey, it has to be my way because Dagmar Khan said so. I want to give you more like a full-on perspective. That being said, what we want to understand is we need to understand the full scope. We need to sit down with our women, with our clients, with our patients, and actually really have like, okay, here is what is possible, let's say with HRT, and here are all the side effects. But also what is possible for you if we actually address the underlying piece that's driving those hormonal problems. Here is what is possible for you. And for myself, as someone who has been doing this work for last how many, 16 years, sometimes I even forget how many, 16 years. And I have worked with over 11,000 women at this stage in my practice, both in person and online. I believe that there are like really integrated conversations that we need to have with our clients. Is really, really important. Okay, so what is modern approach to menopause? So quick recap, menopause is highly misunderstood. And menopause, in a very simple explanation, corresponds to a time in life when ovarian production of hormones start to slow down. And here is a piece. This is where we are getting into the goods. The adrenals begin to take over. The adrenals begin to take over. This is very, very important to understand. Why? Because menopause will show as hormonal issue and your hormones are low. Of course, your estrogen is low, your progesterone is low, but is not a hormonal problem. The key issue is stress. Now, which menopausal woman is not being stressed? Whether it's a financial worries, whether it's difficult time with her teenage kids, whether it's a husband whose affair has been uncovered, whether it's, taking care for her elderly parents and like feeling all the responsibilities of life on her shoulder, or is a piece we'll be looking at and actually doing some journaling together around. And that is, what does woman hold true about menopause in the first place? And here's a very, very powerful thing. There is a research where basically they have looked at women in menopause, actually women in Japan going through menopause. And because women in Japan have generally a positive outlook towards this phase of their life, they see menopause as like the second spring of their life, where they've, completed their obligations and duties for reproduction and taking care of their children and, like having that part of their life completed. And now menopause and post-menopause being the time of their life and get fully focused on themselves, on their mental health, emotional health, physical health, on their passion projects, on the quality of their marriage, on things they want to accomplish in this next phase of their life. Guess what? The menopausal problems are nothing compared to what we experience here in Europe. I'm in Europe, and what we experience in US and in Canada, like really in Western world. And what we hold true as women about what does menopause mean, the stress that's inflicted to us, about the very meaning of menopause, like, hey, I am going through menopause, my life is over. How stressful, how painful, how difficult that is to our woman's body. How difficult, how challenging, how painful, how uncomfortable, how traumatizing that can be to our system. If I believe, I'm full disclosure, I'm not menopausal yet. I'm perimenopausal. I'm stepping into my 40s now. I'm perimenopausal. I'm definitely starting to see shifts in my hormones, unquestionably. My boy is 4 years old. I'm starting to see some changes. And it's for me personally, it's exciting time. I'm very excited to see the changes that are taking place in my body. And I'm observing them from a place of curiosity. I'm observing them from a place of, how interesting that is that I have this thing going on, instead of, oh my God, that's it, my life is over. Do you see the difference here? So our hormones are low in menopause, but this is not coming from the hormones. It is coming from stress. So the way we increase your hormones, if you really want to succeed with your menopausal clients, is by taking away the inflammation first. And the inflammation is a symptom of a stress. The inflammation is a symptom of a stress. So we're going to look at here a piece that, for those of you that love studying physiology, for those of you that love the body, this can change the course of your life. The way women produce hormones in menopause, in menopausal transition, is from the adrenals. And right here on this picture, we can see the beautiful life-affirming image of your adrenals. And you can see these are your kidneys. This is your right kidney and your left kidney. You can see your left kidney being slightly bit higher than your right kidney. And above the kidney, we have a beautiful glands called adrenals. Now, adrenals is how you, of course, produce stress hormones through what's called the HPA axis, but subsequently how you in menopause produce your sex hormones. So transition to menopause takes our sex hormone production from our ovaries into our adrenals. And if my adrenals are busy just fighting a whole day because I'm getting triggered, because I'm not sleeping well, because I have inflammatory based diet, because I feel like I have no value as a woman in the society, actually aging. I'm disgusted by my body. I'm afraid of my future. I feel like my body is falling apart. I'm convinced that my husband is going to change me for a younger, sexier, prettier version of myself. Then my adrenals are just like pew, 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 fighting stress hormones all day, every day. And my adrenals have no time and space, have no opportunity whatsoever to produce sex hormones, estrogen and progesterone. I am pretty much, as a woman, if this is what I'm doing to myself, screwing myself. I'm screwing myself because I'm letting my adrenals just take care of the stress and inflammation instead of fastening and focusing on building a deep peace of mind at the body level, at the nervous system level, at the physiological level, so that my adrenals can actually do the job of producing sex hormones. And here's a big stat, something that might be really, really new to you. When I learned that, I was like, oh, what? Are you joking me? In premenopausal women, adrenal glands are responsible for producing only 5% of your sex hormones. Only 5%. Rest is produced by your ovaries. In postmenopausal women, this number goes from 5% to 90%. 90% of your sex hormones in postmenopause comes from your adrenals, which means, again, if my adrenals are busy taking care of the stress, they won't have capacity to produce any sex hormones. And my body will find some ways of producing the sex hormones, because there are also other places where my body can go to in order to go after sex hormones production, like the fat tissue, which becomes the endocrine gland. But this is really minuscule. What we need to do in order to have a whole new conversation about what does it feel like to be in menopause? What does it feel like to have desire to have sex again? What does it feel like to, not worry about every single year putting on another 5 or 7 pounds and then just like growing into the size of a balloon? If we need to have completely different conversation about things like migraines and headaches and anxiety or cognitive function, we really need to start tapping into this. If we don't, we're just masking symptoms here. We're not doing anything else but masking symptoms and keeping everyone in survival response instead of creating opportunity, creating environment, creating possibility where we as women, where our clients can thrive. Menopause is meant to be a time of thriving. Menopause can be and is designed to be time of thriving. But we need to take our adrenal health. We need to take our stresses. We need to take our perceptions, our triggers, our emotions, our trauma patterns that we haven't dealt with, for the last 50 years. And now all the childhood trauma comes at us with vengeance. We need to start taking this seriously. We need to start taking this seriously. So here is a big piece about adrenals. When we look at the functional medicine space, many times a woman is low in her thyroid. Many times a woman is low in her adrenals. The focus is, let's boost the adrenals. Let's boost the thyroid. But you cannot boost something that is exhausted. You cannot boost something that's deprived of regenerative forces. You cannot boost something that's overworked. It's impossible. We need to start addressing the inflammation, the stressors first. If I put you on a protocol of boosting your adrenals, but I'm not doing anything with the fact that you are in chronic fight or flight response, well, then I'm put you on a fast track of a possible cardiovascular failure. Yes, that's how serious that is. Instead of, when we actually address the inflammation, when we address the stresses, when we address the very fact of what woman holds true about herself as a menopausal woman, we can do a lot of powerful healing together. We can do a lot of powerful healing together. So the one piece that I want you to understand, the one piece that's very, very important for us is looking at what's called the HPA axis. So you actually understand, what do the adrenals have to do with stress in the first place? The HPA axis is known as the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, and it's ultimately how your brain communicates with your adrenals in the times of stress, either if it's a real stress, like let's say someone is pointing a gun at you, hopefully it will never happen to you. But also if it's a perceived stress, like maybe when you see your husband being on the phone in a little bit suspicious way and you're creating all sort of scenarios in your head. So that is a perceived stress and your adrenals can be firing. There's a real stress and your adrenals can be firing. And sad but true, what's happening so much for us nowadays is there's this perceived stress that's firing our adrenals all day, every day. And that's how our adrenals get exhausted. In fact, a lot of women are stepping into menopause with burnout, with exhaustion, with unhealed traumatic birth trauma injuries. With many women are stepping into menopause still being like postnatal. We are having children at later and later age, and we are getting for a child like 1 to 2 years, maybe breastfeeding, and suddenly we are transitioning into menopause. So there's a lot to be said on this front, but I really want you to understand this HPA axis. So how does stress fires the HPA axis? How does stress actually affect your adrenals? Stressful event happens. Whether it's real stress, like getting into a possible car accident, or it's a perceived stress, like, your boss looking at you the weird way. When you get that weird look and you're like, oh, what is he up to? Like, am I going to get fired next week? I don't know. So stressful event, perceived or real. It sends signals to the amygdala in your brain. And the amygdala sends stress signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus, in turn, activates the sympathetic nervous system. That's a term you definitely heard about. Sympathetic nervous system is the fight and flight response. You are ready to fight. You're ready to flee. You're ready to attack. You're ready to brace yourself. You're ready to protect yourself. So this triggering of fight or flight response now is sending the signals to the adrenals. And what your beautiful adrenals do, that in menopause should be producing those stress hormones, they release epinephrine and adrenaline into your bloodstream. So now you have stress, brain, adrenals, you have adrenaline in your bloodstream, and the epinephrine adrenaline triggers release of blood sugar and fats from storage site in your body. Then suddenly this initial surge of adrenaline subsides, and the hypothalamus in your brain activates the second stress response, which is the HPA axis. Now, there are so many women, either because of living with an abusive husband, or having a lot of financial stress, or going through divorce, or dealing with like so many responsibilities, like the job, the children, the family obligations. They are drowning in this that entire day. In fact, our pandemic, our lockdown, whether you got COVID or you had fear of getting COVID, maybe you had fear of losing your loved ones, fear of for your parents to get sick. This is all triggering this very dangerous cocktail all through the day. And then what do we do in the evening to unwind? We have a glass of wine and we chill out with Netflix instead of doing things like vagus nerve practices. Instead of, you know, maybe, I don't know, sometime like writing a letter full of anger and hate, like releasing all of that pent up stress out of ourselves and then burning the letter in front of our eyes. Or maybe putting a hand on our heart and just like letting go of all that has been built up inside of ourselves, and then forgiving the situations, the people, the places that need to be forgiven. We as a culture, we as a woman have so hard time not only, you know, dealing with our stresses through the day, but even more like releasing the stresses before the day is over. I said that to my students in our certification program, which is back in the day when I was doing a lot of one-on-one work with my clients on women's health, on pelvic healing, on menopause. Part of my contract, like what I would have literally in my agreement is my client has to have a way of releasing her stress at the end of the day before she goes to sleep. Otherwise, we can't work together. Like I can't work with someone if they're not willing to take responsibility for that, because I can give you the best, the world-class treatment plan in place. But if you're just flooding in adrenaline all day, every day, it's not going to do anything. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. And if you're a practitioner, if you're a mind-body therapist, if you want to work with us to become the like really cutting edge women's health specialist in the field, then maybe you need to raise your standards. If you want to work with us, I'll teach you how to raise your standards. Because we can't be just like, you know, holding our clients like babies. Our clients are responsible for themselves. Yes, we'll be there for them to show them how to heal. We'll hold them accountable. We'll love them through difficult emotions. We will, you know, help them break through resistance and overcome fear and all of that. But at the end of the day, your clients are responsible for themselves. You are not responsible for your client. I don't care whether someone pays me 2,000 or 4,000 or 6,000 or 10,000 euros. If you're not willing to release stress of the day at the end of the day before you go to sleep, your results have nothing to do with me. Period. Period. And I will give you all the love and motivation and aspiration and awaken your desire to step into that. But, you know, if you let the social media, if you let the stream of Facebook, if you let the what's happening on Instagram at 2 a.m. to be more important to you than your health, then sorry, we can't be friends. I mean it. I mean it. We have so stepped away from like a common sense life. Our phones, our social media, our like what's happening in the world has completely hijacked our brain. And back in the day, I don't know about you, but when I was a small child, the only time we could get news, the only time we could know what's happening in the world was like 7 p.m. news. Now the news, it's on the phone, it's on Twitter, it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, it's on, I don't know, CNN. It's everywhere. We are on social media at 2 a.m. in the morning, comparing ourselves to others, wishing our pain, wishing our struggles, wishing our difficulties just fucking go away. Our phones were not in our hands 10 years ago, not maybe even like 7 years ago. But now we no longer know what to do with ourselves. And the common sense that has been so ingrained in our grandmothers and our grandfathers, even our parents, is no longer common practice. everyone will tell me, oh, I know that I need to sleep well. Oh, I know I need to deal with stress. But who's doing it? Who is actually doing it? And then we give our bodies and our cardiovascular system away because, hey, the HRT is here to solve all our problems. Is HRT really going to help me heal my heart if my husband has cheated on me? Is HRT really going to help me to solve all the triggers I see when I'm around my mother-in-law? Is HRT really going to help me to, overcome my low estrogen because I'm just spiraling adrenaline all day long? Like, what do we need to hold true for ourselves as women, as wives, as partners, as business owners, as colleagues, as friends, as community, to start raising our standards? It's not enough. It's not enough to believe that menopause means fucking death. I so admire the women in Japan who see a new possibilities for them, who view an opportunity in menopause to thrive and grow and evolve and focus on things that are meaningful to them, instead of all this emotional abuse we do to ourselves as women invest when it comes to what we hold true about menopause. Who's with me on this? Who's with me on this? It's like, if I feel like a piece of shit, a worthless piece of shit, because I'm, I don't know, 45 or 47 or 49, and my vagina is fucking getting dried, does that mean I'm fucking worthless piece of shit? Who's with me on this? Who is like, I have to raise my standard here. I have to raise the standard for my clients. Because if I don't do this, if I don't do this in my life, in my business, in my practice, then what the fuck is going to happen? I am saying enough fucking here. This has to stop. The perpetuated self-abuse, the perpetuated emotional trauma, the perpetuated stress, the perpetuated not enoughness, the perpetuated of, I mean nothing because I gained fucking 10 pounds. Or I have different hair color. Or I have cellulite. It has to stop. There's a deep fear in us. A deep fear in us. The biggest fear I see in some of the most successful women that I'm privileged to work with is, I'm afraid of dying fat, ugly, and alone. I'm afraid of dying fat, ugly, and alone. And of course, there's a deep work to be done on this. We're not gonna solve this deep wound just by me screaming into your headphones and getting all fired up on Friday night. There's a work at the level of your nervous system and subconscious that is essential to be done, which is the exact thing we are doing in our certification program, which is the exact thing. If you want support for yourself as a woman, you can get that support from our Fleisch practitioners.